Muscular Millionaire CEO comforts crying toddler on the bus, shocked to discover the child is his. Grant remained frozen by the door, water dripping from his expensive coat onto the worn carpet. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken accusations. Have you ever experienced a moment when instinct overrides logic? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The man who controlled billion-dollar empires found himself powerless in the face of a small boy's tears, a child whose eyes mirrored his own. Rain pounded against the bus windows as Grant Lawson checked his watch for the third time. A Detroit City bus wasn't where a man of his status belonged, but his driver had called in sick, and the merger meeting couldn't wait. His custom Italian shoes squeaked against the worn rubber flooring as he pressed his phone tighter to his ear. "Tell the board I won't accept anything less than full control of their Asian markets," he growled, ignoring the side glances from other passengers. "We're talking billions, not." A soft hiccup cut through his concentration. Then another. Across the aisle, a small boy sat alone, tears streaming down his round cheeks. His oversized hoodie swallowed his tiny frame, the hood pulled up against the chill of the bus's broken heater. A worn teddy bear with one "I'm missing" rested in his lap. Grant's sentence died mid-word. Something about the child's isolation tugged at a place he'd locked away years ago. "I'll call you back," he muttered, ending the call against his CFO's protests. Before he could question his own actions, Grant moved across the aisle and crouched down. The boy's face was partially hidden, but Grant could see the tracks of tears on his caramel-colored skin. "Hey, buddy," Grant said, his usually commanding voice softening. "Where's your mom?" The boy lifted his face, and Grant's entire world stopped. Those pale green eyes, unusual, distinctive, stared back at him like a mirror to his childhood photos. The same crooked smile, the same dimple in the left cheek. The bus lurched forward, but for Grant, time froze. "My mommy's sick," the boy whispered, clutching his bear tighter. "I was supposed to stay with Mrs. Wilson, but she had to go to the hospital too." Grant's throat tightened. Impossible. He didn't have children. "What's your name?" he managed. "Tyler," the boy answered. "I'm 4. For years." Grant's mind raced backward, calculating, remembering. The driver announced the next stop, a neighborhood in Flint that Grant would never visit under normal circumstances. Tyler stood, wiping his eyes. "This is my stop. I gotta go home and check on mommy." Have you ever experienced a moment when instinct overrides logic? When something inside you recognizes truth before your mind can process it? Drop a comment if you felt that bone-deep certainty that changed everything. Without thinking, Grant stood. "I'll walk with you." The rain soaked through his $1,000 suit as they stepped off the bus. Tyler's small hand slipped naturally into his as they splashed through puddles toward a run-down apartment complex. "Mommy doesn't feel good," Tyler explained, leading the way up cracked concrete stairs. "She coughs a lot." Grant's heart hammered against his ribs as Tyler pushed open apartment 3B. The smell of menthol and medicine hit him first. Then he saw her, thin and pale on a worn couch, a blanket pulled to her chin. Ava Johnson, the woman he'd walked away from 4 years ago. Her eyes widened in shock, darting between Grant and Tyler. "Grant?" she whispered, voice breaking. "How did you?" But Grant couldn't form words as he stared at Tyler, then back at Ava, the truth crushing down on him like a physical weight. The man who had everything had just discovered the one thing he never knew he needed. 4 years ago, he walked away from her without looking back. Now she was the only thing he could see, lying frail on a couch in a crumbling apartment, holding secrets that belonged to him. "Tyler, baby, go play in your room for a bit," Ava said, her voice strained but gentle. The boy hesitated, looking between the adults with confusion, before nodding and disappearing down the short hallway. Grant remained frozen by the door, water dripping from his expensive coat onto the worn carpet. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken accusations. "He's mine." Not a question. Ava pushed herself upright, the effort visible in the tightness around her eyes. "Yes. For years, Ava." His voice dropped dangerously low. "For years you kept my son from me. Your son." Her laugh was bitter, triggering a coughing fit that doubled her over. When she straightened, Grant noticed the tissue in her hand, spotted with blood. "You made it clear your career came first. Your family made it clear I wasn't welcome. What was I supposed to do?" Grant stalked across the small living room, his large frame making the space feel even smaller. The walls, thin and peeling, seemed to shrink inward with each step. "You were supposed to tell me." His control slipped, voice rising before he caught himself, glancing toward Tyler's room. "I had a right to know." "You had no right to what I did with my body after you left," she countered, chin lifted despite her pallor. When Grant stepped closer, Ava struggled to stand, swaying slightly. Instinctively, he reached out to steady her, his hand circling her wrist. The contact sent an unwelcome jolt through him. She was burning with fever, but the spark between them hadn't dimmed. They both recoiled, Grant stepping back like he'd been burned. "You're sick," he stated flatly, eyes cataloging her symptoms. "How long?" "It's just pneumonia." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I'll be fine." The apartment told a different story. Past due medical bills scattered on the coffee table. Empty medicine bottles. A calendar marked with missed work shifts. "And who's taking care of Tyler while you're too weak to stand?" The accusation hung between them. "We manage." Ava lifted her chin. "We always have." "How would you react if someone kept your child hidden from you for years? Or from the other perspective, what would make you hide a pregnancy from someone you once loved?" Share your thoughts below. Grant moved to the window, pushing aside the thin curtain to look at the neighborhood. Crumbling infrastructure, abandoned storefronts, a far cry from his Chicago penthouse. "I could have provided for him. For both of you." The words felt inadequate even as he spoke them. "We didn't need your money," she said, though the state of the apartment contradicted her pride. "We needed—" She never finished. Tyler appeared in the doorway, clutching his teddy bear. "Are you my daddy?" he asked, looking up at Grant with those identical green eyes. Before Grant could form a response, Ava doubled over in another coughing fit, this one more violent than before. When she pulled her hand away from her mouth, bright red blood splattered across her palm and the worn couch cushions. The world narrowed to that splash of crimson. Grant moved without thinking, scooping Ava into his arms despite her weak protests. "Tyler, grab your bear. We're taking Mommy to the hospital." Her head lolled against his chest as he carried her down the stairs, her whispered words barely audible. "Please don't take him from me." He built a billion-dollar empire through calculated decisions. But watching the mother of his child fighting for breath, calculations felt worthless against raw instinct. "Her oxygen levels are dangerously low," the emergency room doctor explained, glancing at the monitors. "The pneumonia has progressed to both lungs. She should have been admitted days ago." Grant stood with his back against the wall of the curtained ER bay, watching as nurses efficiently hooked Ava to IVs and oxygen. Tyler sat on a chair in the corner, small legs swinging, eyes wide with worry but distracted by the tablet Grant had purchased from the hospital gift shop. "Will she recover?" Grant asked, keeping his voice steady. The doctor hesitated. "We need to run more tests." "Has she mentioned any ongoing health issues? Previous lung problems?" Grant's jaw tightened. "I wouldn't know. We haven't been in contact." Understanding dawned in the doctor's eyes as he glanced between Grant and Tyler. "I see. Well, she'll need to be admitted, possibly for several days." "Are you able to care for the child?" The question hit Grant like a physical blow. Was he? For hours ago, he didn't know he was a father. "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "He'll stay with me." The emergency room lights cast harsh shadows across Ava's cheekbones, highlighting how much weight she'd lost since he last held her face between his hands 4 years ago. Her dark skin had a grayish undertone, her usually vibrant eyes dulled with pain and medication. When the nurse asked for insurance information, Grant handed over his platinum card instead. "Whatever she needs." The nurse smiled warmly. "Your wife is lucky to have you." Neither Grant nor Ava corrected her. Instead, an awkward silence fell as the nurse departed. When Ava reached for the water cup, Grant instinctively moved to help her. Their fingers brushed, and despite her condition, Despite the years of separation and secrets, an unmistakable current passed between them. When was the last time you put aside your pride to help someone who hurt you, or allowed someone who wounded you to help when you needed it most? The line between love and hate is paper thin. Tell me if you've walked it. You don't have to do this, Ava whispered, her voice raspy through the oxygen mask. He's my son. Grant's response was simple but final. And what happens when I'm better? When your curiosity is satisfied? Her eyes held a challenge despite her weakness. You go back to your life in Chicago and send birthday checks. Before Grant could respond, Tyler climbed onto the bed, careful of the tubes connected to his mother. Mommy, are you going to heaven like Mrs. Wilson's cat? Ava's face crumpled as she pulled Tyler close with what little strength she had. No, baby. Mommy's just really tired. Grant watched them, this small family he hadn't known existed, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. The merger waiting in Chicago, the board meeting, the investors. None of it seemed to matter. The doctor returned, expression grave as he reviewed scan results. We need to discuss treatment options, he began, then paused, glancing at Tyler playing with his bear. Grant caught the unspoken concern. Tyler, buddy, let's find the cafeteria. I bet they have ice cream. As they walked away, Grant heard the doctor's lowered voice. Without immediate treatment, he cut him off with a sharp nod. Whatever she needs, cost is no object. From the doorway, Grant caught Ava's gaze. The look she gave him was complex, relief mixed with resentment, and something else that made his skin heat despite the sterile chill of the hospital room. This wasn't just about obligation anymore. This was about rectifying the biggest mistake of his life. The penthouse that housed his solitary existence now echoed with small footsteps and questions he wasn't equipped to answer, about dinosaurs, about bedtime stories, and most terrifying, about why he never knew he had a son. Is this all yours? Tyler asked, eyes wide as he pressed his face against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Grant's Chicago penthouse. 40 stories below, the city sparkled like fallen stars. Yes, Grant answered, setting down Tyler's small backpack, all Ava would allow him to pack from their apartment. The worn superhero bag looked out of place against the minimalist design of his living room. 3 days had passed in a blur. Ava had been stabilized and transferred to Chicago's top pulmonary specialist at Grant's insistence. The doctors were cautiously optimistic but warned her recovery would be slow. Meanwhile, Grant had taken emergency leave from his company, something he hadn't done in the decade since founding it. Do you have any toys? Tyler asked, still exploring the space with cautious excitement. Grant froze. Toys? Of course a child would want toys. We'll get some tomorrow. His executive assistant, Marion, had taken the news of his sudden fatherhood with remarkable composure, immediately ordering a child's bed, age-appropriate clothes, and basics for the guest room. But toys hadn't made the list. Can I call Mommy? Tyler's question was smaller, vulnerable. Grant checked his watch. The doctor said she needs rest, but we can video chat in the morning. Seeing Tyler's face fall, he added, she sent you a message, though. He pulled up the brief video the nurse had helped record. Ava's tired face appeared on screen, her smile genuine despite her weakness. Be good for your daddy, Tyler. Mommy loves you so much. I'll see you soon. Tyler's worn teddy bear sat incongruously on Grant's minimalist glass coffee table, a splash of childhood against the monochrome backdrop he'd curated to impress business associates, not comfort 4-year-olds. What's your bear's name? Grant asked, desperate for any conversation that might ease the awkwardness. Mister. Hugs, Tyler replied, retrieving the toy. Mommy made him when I was a baby. Grant studied the hand-stitched bear, noting the careful repairs and loving details. Another piece of his son's life he'd missed entirely. Have you ever found yourself suddenly responsible for someone else's well-being without warning? How did it change you? What surprised you most about yourself in that situation? Bedtime proved to be a challenge neither of them was prepared for. Grant had never put a child to bed, and Tyler had never slept without his mother nearby. The monsters might get me, Tyler whispered, eyes darting to the unfamiliar shadows in the guest room. Grant, who dealt with corporate monsters daily, found himself at a loss. There are no monsters here. Mommy always checks. Tyler's bottom lip trembled. Something clicked in Grant's mind, a distant memory of his own childhood fears. Without a word, he dropped to his knees and made a show of looking under the bed and the closet behind curtains. All clear, he reported with the same seriousness he used in board meetings. And if any try to sneak in later, they'll have to get through me first. Tyler's smile was hesitant but genuine, the first real connection they'd shared. Later, after 3 bedtime stories and a promise to leave the hall light on, Grant sat alone in his living room, phone in hand. He'd been calling Ava daily for updates on her condition, but tonight's call felt different. He asked about monsters, Grant said without preamble when she answered. Her soft laugh turned into a cough. Did you check under the bed? Yes. A pause. He has your smile. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken history. Thank you, she finally said, for taking care of him. As Grant tucked Tyler into bed, an act becoming surprisingly natural after just a week, his phone buzzed with a text from Ava. We need to talk about custody when I'm better. This arrangement is temporary. The word struck him with unexpected force. Temporary wasn't what he wanted anymore. Not with the son he never knew he needed. The boardroom fell silent as the door swung open, revealing the impossible. Chicago's most notorious bachelor CEO with a miniature version of himself clutching his hand. Gentlemen, ladies, Grant nodded toward the stunned board members. I apologize for the interruption. My childcare arrangements fell through. 2 weeks had passed since Grant had discovered Tyler's existence. 2 weeks of crash course parenting, of late-night research on child development, of rearranging his entire life around a 4-year-old schedule. The board meeting couldn't be postponed again. The Nakamura merger, the deal that would cement Lawson Enterprises as a global leader, required his personal attention. When his newly hired nanny called with a family emergency, Grant made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month ago. He brought his son to work. Tyler, this is where Daddy makes important decisions, Grant explained, setting up the child at a small table in the corner with coloring books and quiet toys. Can you be my special helper and play quietly? Tyler nodded solemnly, already uncapping markers with intense concentration. Grant turned back to the board, their expressions ranging from confusion to disapproval. Charles Winthrop, his oldest board member, didn't bother hiding his displeasure. As I was saying before our interruption, Grant continued smoothly. The Nakamura terms are favorable, but I believe we can push for exclusive rights to their semiconductor technology. The meeting proceeded, but Grant felt the shift. The whispers, the glances between board members. His personal life had never interfered with business before. He'd built his reputation on being solely focused on corporate growth. Now, that foundation was cracking. Perhaps we should discuss the PR implications, Victoria Chun, his marketing director, suggested carefully. The tabloids have already run several stories about your newly discovered family situation. Grant's jaw tightened. He'd seen the headlines, the speculation, the thinly veiled accusations about Ava's motives in keeping Tyler hidden. My personal life is not relevant to this merger. With respect, sir, Charles interjected, Westridge Investments is our main competitor for this deal, and they're already using your situation to suggest instability in leadership. They're questioning your focus. The 70-story view of Chicago's skyline, once Grant's symbol of achievement, now seemed distant and hollow compared to the small hand that occasionally tugged his sleeve onto the conference table, showing him each completed drawing. Would you risk your professional reputation to embrace an unexpected personal responsibility? Have you ever had to choose between career success and personal authenticity? Share your experience below. Grant was about to respond when his phone lit up with a video call from Ava. He'd programmed her calls to come through regardless of his Do Not Disturb settings. Excuse me, he said, stepping away from the table. Tyler, come say hi to Mommy. Tyler scrambled from his seat, excitement radiating from his small body. Grant angled the phone so both could see Ava. Her color had improved, though she still looked fragile against the hospital pillows. My brave boy, she smiled. Are you being good for your daddy? I'm helping with business, Tyler proclaimed proudly. holding up his drawing of what appeared to be stick figures in a tall building. Something in Grant's chest tightened as he watched them interact. Their easy bond, the love so evident between them. What right did he have to insert himself into their lives after 4 years of absence, regardless of whether that absence was his choice? When the call ended, Grant returned to the boardroom, where conversation had clearly continued without him. "Need to consider the company's image," Charles was saying. "A child born out of wedlock, hidden for years. It's not the family values our conservative investors expect." Grant's hands flattened against the polished table. "My son is not a PR problem." The board chairman cleared his throat. "Your personal situation is becoming a liability, Grant. Our investors are questioning your focus." In that moment, Grant realized how much had changed, because for the first time in his career, the threat didn't ignite his competitive fire. Instead, it felt irrelevant compared to the text lighting up his phone. "Tyler has nightmares asking for you. How soon can you get back?" "Gentlemen, ladies," Grant said, gathering his papers. "I built this company from nothing. If my commitment is being questioned because I'm being a father to my child, perhaps we need to reevaluate who sits at this table, not who sits in my home." He lifted Tyler into his arms, the boy's weight, still unfamiliar, yet increasingly essential, anchoring him to a new reality. "The Nakamura merger will proceed. My team will handle the details, and my son and I are going home." He walked into her hospital room not as the polished executive who once left her, but as a father transformed by 10 days of raising their son. And the electricity between them couldn't be dismissed as merely shared parental concern. "Mommy!" Tyler broke free from Grant's hand, rushing across the hospital room to where Avis sat on the edge of the bed. She was dressed in street clothes for the first time in weeks, her discharge papers waiting for signature. "My baby," she whispered, gathering him close. Her eyes met Grant's over Tyler's head, cautious, questioning. Grant hung back, hands in his pockets. The Chicago specialists had done their job well. The pneumonia had cleared, though they'd warned she needed continued care and monitoring. "The car's waiting whenever you're ready," he said, voice carefully neutral. The drive back to Flint was quiet, Tyler eventually nodding off in his car seat. Michigan autumn painted the landscape with burnt orange and fading light as they crossed the state line. "You're bored, giving you trouble?" Ava finally asked, breaking the silence. Grant's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Nothing I can't handle. That's not what the business news says." When he glanced at her, she shrugged. The nurses left their tablets. "I read." Of course she had. Ava had always been sharp, observant. It was one of the things that had first attracted him to her at that community fundraiser years ago. Her intelligence cutting through the practice charm he used on everyone else. "The board will adjust or be replaced," he said simply. She studied his profile. "You've changed." Had he, or had fatherhood simply uncovered parts of himself he'd buried beneath ambition and expectation? The hospital parking garage was nearly empty when they arrived for her follow-up appointment. Grant walked beside her, close enough to catch her if she faltered but careful not to touch. The distance between them felt both necessary and painful. "I can take it from here," she said when they reached the clinic doors. "Take Tyler to the cafeteria. This might take a while." Grant nodded, leading Tyler away. An hour later, they returned with stories of ice cream adventures and a small stuffed penguin from the gift shop. The doctor was just finishing up. "Your recovery is progressing well, but you'll need continued rest and medications. I want to see you again in 2 weeks." Night had fallen by the time they left. Tyler slept on Ava's shoulder as Grant guided them through the parking garage. When her steps slowed, exhaustion evident in her posture, Grant gently lifted Tyler from her arms. "I can manage," she protested. "I know you can," he replied quietly. "You've been managing everything alone for 4 years. Let me help just this once." In that moment, something shifted between them. Acknowledgement of her strength rather than accusation for her choices. Is it possible to rekindle something with someone who once broke your heart? Does shared responsibility for another life, a child, change the equation? Tell me if you've ever given someone a second chance and whether it was worth the risk. At her apartment, Grant settled Tyler in bed while Ava took her medications. When he emerged from the bedroom, he found her standing by the window, moonlight silvering her silhouette. "Thank you," she said, not turning around, "for bringing us home." Ava. Her name felt different on his tongue now, weighted with history and possibility. She turned, and the distance between them suddenly felt unbearable. Grant couldn't remember who moved first, only that one moment they were apart, and the next his hand trembled slightly as it cupped her cheek. This man who commanded boardrooms without hesitation, now uncertain before the only woman who'd ever seen beneath his armor. "This is a mistake," she whispered against his lips, even as her fingers curled into his shirt, pulling rather than pushing away. The kiss held 4 years of absence, of questions of what-ifs. Her body remembered his, melding against him with familiar heat. The spell broke when her doctor entered with forgotten test results. The news wasn't what they expected. Ava would need specialized treatment only available in Chicago, putting her directly in Grant's world, where old prejudices and family disapproval once tore them apart. The question in both their eyes was clear. Would history repeat itself? She stepped into a Chicago penthouse like a queen entering enemy territory. Chin high, eyes wary, and body language screaming the contradiction they both felt, wanting distance while craving closeness. "Your place hasn't changed," Ava observed, setting her small suitcase beside the door. The penthouse gleamed with the same cool elegance she remembered from their relationship. All glass, steel, and calculated minimalism. "Some things change," Grant replied, eyes on Tyler, who was eagerly showing his mother the toy-filled room that had once been Grant's home office. "Others stay exactly the same." The arrangement was temporary, they both insisted. 8 weeks of specialized treatment at Chicago Memorial. A short-term disruption to both their lives. Yet as days passed, temporary began feeling increasingly permanent. Grant's mother called on the 3rd day. "The Chicago Tribune Society page says you have a child." Elizabeth Lawson's voice crackled through the speaker, crisp with disapproval. "Please tell me this is another tabloid fabrication." Grant's eyes found Ava across the kitchen, helping Tyler with breakfast. "It's not a fabrication, Mother. I have a son. His name is Tyler." The silence stretched painfully before Elizabeth responded. "And the mother is here with us. Her name is Ava Johnson. You met her 4 years ago." Another pause. "The social worker? The one from that dreadful neighborhood?" Grant's jaw tightened. "She's Tyler's mother. That's all that matters." The conversation ended with a thinly veiled threat about family obligations and the upcoming charity gala, an event Grant had attended every year since taking over the company. "Your family hasn't changed either," Ava said quietly after he hung up. For nights later, against Ava's protests, they attended the charity gala. Grant refused to hide his newly discovered family, and Ava refused to let him face the wolves alone. Chicago's elite circled Ava at the charity gala, their smiles tight and eyes calculating, assessing the woman who had managed what society daughters couldn't, capturing Grant Lawson's full attention and providing his only heir. An heir whose beautiful brown skin challenged their pale, homogeneous world. "What a surprise to see you again, dear," cooed Margot Whitley, the banking heiress who had pursued Grant for years. "And with a child. How enterprising of you." Ava's smile never faltered. "Tyler is the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm sure you understand the joy of motherhood." The pointed reference to Margot's childless status wasn't lost on anyone within earshot. Have you ever been judged for who you love? Faced disapproval because your relationship crossed social boundaries? Share your experience with prejudice and how you handled it, or whether you walked away. Living in close quarters created its own tension. The penthouse suddenly felt both too large and too small. Grant emerged from his bathroom one morning to find Ava wrapped in a towel, water droplets tracing paths down her neck from her shower. Their eyes locked, steam swirling between them, before she retreated to her room. That night, Elizabeth and Richard Lawson insisted on a family dinner. Tyler charmed his grandfather with stories about dinosaurs, but Elizabeth remained ice cold, her gaze sliding over Ava as if she were invisible. Private school options should be discussed immediately, Elizabeth announced over dessert. The Lawson name opens doors at Westbrook Academy. Tyler's only 4, Ava countered, and we live in Flint. Surely that arrangement will change now, Elizabeth said, eyebrows raised. Grant has responsibilities here. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Grant reached for Ava's hand under the table, surprised when she didn't pull away. My primary responsibility is to my son, Grant replied evenly. And to his mother. Elizabeth's teacup clattered against its saucer. You can't possibly expect us to accept this arrangement as permanent. Before Grant could respond, Ava stood, Tyler's hand in hers. Your son never asked for my acceptance when he left me 4 years ago, she said evenly, and I'm certainly not asking for yours now. As she walked out, Grant faced a choice that would define everything. Follow the woman and child walking away, or remain in the world that shaped him. Without hesitation, he threw his napkin on the table and followed Ava. The tabloid headlines stripped away their privacy in 8 cruel words. CEO's secret child. Hidden heir or calculated gold dig? Grant slammed the newspaper down on his desk, fury radiating from every pore. Across the headline was a grainy photo of Ava leaving the hospital with Tyler, their faces clearly visible despite the photographer's distance. Find out who leaked this, he growled to his security director. Now, in the months since Ava's treatment began, they'd settled into an uneasy routine. Grant worked from home when possible. Ava focused on recovery. Tyler blossomed under the attention of both parents. The fragile peace they'd built felt like it might actually last. Until this morning's paper. Ava sat at the kitchen island, tension visible in every line of her body as she scrolled through her phone. It's everywhere, she said quietly. Social media, news sites. They even found pictures from the community center where we met. Grant loosened his tie, feeling strangled. I'm handling it. Her laugh held no humor. Like you handled your parents? Or the board? Some things can't be controlled, Grant. Camera flashes exploded like artillery fire whenever they stepped outside, transforming simple trips to Tyler's new preschool into media gauntlets that left Ava's hands shaking and Grant's jaw clenched so tight he tasted blood. Ava, did you hide the child for money? Grant, did you know about your son? Is this why the Nakamura deal is stalling? The questions followed them everywhere, growing more invasive with each passing day. The Lawson Enterprises stock price dropped 8 points in 3 days. The board is calling for an emergency meeting, Marion informed him quietly. Westridge Investment Group is using the scandal to approach our key clients. Grant's office became a war room. Investigation revealed that someone had accessed private hospital records, flight manifests, even Tyler's birth certificate. This wasn't random tabloid interest. This was coordinated. It was Roberts, his security director, finally reported. He's been feeding information to Westridge for months. James Roberts, Grant's CFO and one of his oldest friends. How far would you go to protect your family from public scrutiny? What's your breaking point when your private life becomes public consumption? Drop your thoughts below on where you draw the line. That night, Grant returned home later than usual, the weight of betrayal heavy on his shoulders. He found Ava on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill, staring at the city lights. You're going to lose the company, she said without turning. Because of us. If that's the price, I'll pay it. He stepped beside her, close enough to feel her warmth but not touching. Don't be stupid. She finally looked at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. That company is your life. It was, he corrected. Things change. The tension between them crackled, months of restraint and years of hurt creating a volatile mixture. When she stood to leave, Grant caught her wrist. Don't. The argument that followed was inevitable. All the fears and accusations they'd been holding back erupting at once. Her voice rose with each point about sacrifice and secrets. His deepened with frustration and regret. You think I wouldn't have chosen you? He demanded, backing her against the balcony railing. You never gave me the chance. You already made your choice 4 years ago. She fired back, refusing to be intimidated by his size or his anger. The shift from fury to passion happened in an instant. Her hands pulling him closer instead of pushing him away, his mouth finding hers with bruising intensity. Months of wanting, of denial, of proximity without touch shattered with each desperate kiss. Later, tangled in his sheets, reality intruded with the buzz of his phone. Grant reached for it reluctantly, Ava's head still resting on his chest. The message from his lawyer was brief but devastating. They're filing for emergency custody evaluation. Someone's claiming Ava kept the child hidden for potential financial gain. The fury in Grant's eyes matched the sudden fear in Ava's, but for entirely different reasons. Trust built over weeks shattered in seconds when the question finally escaped his lips. Did you keep him from me because of who I am, or how much I'm worth? The custody petition landed like a bomb. Grant's parents denied involvement, but their lawyer's name appeared in the supporting documents. The allegation was clear. Ava had hidden Tyler for 4 years, only allowing Grant to discover him when she needed financial support. The pressure was crushing them both. Grant spent hours with lawyers while Ava underwent another round of treatment. Tyler sensed the tension, becoming clingy and fearful. One night, after Tyler finally fell asleep, Grant found Ava on the balcony again. Chicago stretched below them, indifferent to their struggles. My lawyer says we need to address the financial motive claim, he began, keeping his voice neutral. Ava stiffened. There was no financial motive. You were struggling. The words came out wrong, an accusation rather than observation. So, you think I orchestrated our son getting on that specific bus? Coach him to cry until you noticed? Her voice rose slightly before she controlled it, glancing toward Tyler's room. Grant ran a hand through his hair. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She turned to face him fully. 4 weeks of playing family, one night in your bed, and the first challenge has you questioning my integrity. I'm trying to protect us. The strain cracked his usual composure. The courts will ask these questions. We need answers. The truth is the answer, she fired back. I kept him from you because I loved you too much to make you choose between me and everything else you valued. The penthouse balcony, 40 floors above Chicago's gleaming lights, felt like the edge of a cliff as they stood on opposite sides, the city below offering no solutions to the chasm widening between them. When have words wounded you beyond what you thought you could forgive? Is there anything someone you love could say that would be unforgivable? Share what you believe tests a relationship most. If you believe that, Grant said quietly, you never knew me at all. Something broke in Ava's expression. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the man I fell in love with was just who I wanted you to be. That night, they slept in separate rooms for the first time since the heated encounter after the media exposure. The physical distance echoed their emotional one, wanting to bridge the gap but unsure if the foundation could still support them. The next morning, Grant woke to find Ava packing a small bag. What are you doing? He asked from the doorway, voice still rough with sleep. My treatment session is today. Last one. She didn't look at him. After that, I'm taking Tyler back to Flint. The custody hearing is weeks away. I can't. She finally met his eyes. I can't stay here with this between us. Grant stepped forward, stopping when she flinched. Ava, please. We can work through this. Can we? Her voice was tired. Or will every argument, every disagreement, come back to the same question? Did I keep your son from you for money? He had no answer that wouldn't sound hollow. Her treatment bag packed. Ava's voice was dangerously calm. I kept him from you because I loved you too much to make you choose between me and everything else you valued. I see now that was the right decision. The apartment door closed with a soft click behind her. No dramatic slam. Just quiet finality as Grant realized sometimes the greatest mistakes aren't what we do, but what we allow ourselves to believe. He built his fortune recognizing the value of things, yet failed to see the treasure walking away until hospitals called reporting Ava had collapsed, Tyler sobbing beside her unconscious form. The call came at 3:47 p.m., while Grant was negotiating with the board about stepping down temporarily to handle his personal matters. Mr. Lawson? An unfamiliar voice, clinical and urgent. This is Mercy Hospital in Detroit. Ava Johnson has been admitted in critical condition. She had your contact information listed. Grant's world narrowed to a pinpoint. What happened? Where's my son? She collapsed at home. A neighbor called the ambulance. Your son is here with our child life specialist, but he's very upset. Ms. Johnson is currently unconscious, and Grant was already moving. Phone pressed to his ear. I'm on my way. Tell Tyler his daddy is coming. The 3-hour drive to Detroit was the longest of his life. Every traffic light, every slowdown felt like torture. His mind raced with regrets. The doubt he'd allowed to poison what they were building. The words he couldn't take back. The pediatric waiting room's cheerful animal murals and bright colors created a grotesque contrast to Tyler's silent tears and Grant's ashen face as doctors worked behind closed doors to stabilize the woman who connected them. Daddy, Tyler whimpered, burrowing against Grant's chest. Mommy fell down and wouldn't wake up. Grant held him tight, his own eyes burning. The doctors are helping her now. Is Mommy going to heaven? The question nearly broke him. No, Buddy. Grant prayed he wasn't lying. She's just very sick. Hours passed in the waiting room. Tyler eventually fell asleep on Grant's lap, exhausted from fear and crying. Grant sat motionless, afraid that any movement might wake his son or somehow affect Ava's condition rooms away. His phone buzzed constantly, board members, lawyers, his parents. He ignored them all. What would you sacrifice for someone you love? Career? Pride? Fortune? Have you ever faced losing someone before you had the chance to make things right? Tell me about your moment of clarity. The doctor finally emerged near midnight, his expression grim. Mr. Lawson, your wife is stabilized, but it was close. The pneumonia treatment was successful, but it masked an underlying condition. Her heart is damaged, likely from untreated rheumatic fever in childhood. Will she recover? The question felt ripped from his throat. With proper treatment, yes. But she'll need specialized care. The doctor hesitated. Her insurance situation is complicated. Grant cut him off. Money is not an issue. Whatever she needs. The doctor nodded. There's an experimental treatment protocol, but it's in Detroit, not covered by insurance, and success rates are preliminary at best. Grant's response was immediate. Make it happen. What he didn't say, couldn't say with Tyler sleeping against him, was that this meant returning to where it all began, abandoning the Chicago empire he'd built, and choosing family over fortune at last. When Ava regained consciousness the next morning, Grant was beside her bed, Tyler curled up on a cot nearby. You're here, she whispered, voice barely audible. I'm here. Grant took her hand, relief making his own voice unsteady. I'm not going anywhere. Her eyes filled with tears. I couldn't breathe, and all I could think was that Tyler would be alone, and you wouldn't. Stop. Grant pressed his forehead to hers. You were right to leave. I questioned the one thing I should have trusted without hesitation. Your love for our son. The custody case is withdrawn. My parents have been informed they'll have no access to Tyler unless they accept you fully. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I don't care about the company or Chicago or what anyone thinks. I care about you, about Tyler, about the family we should have been all along. Ava's fingers weakly squeezed his. Don't make promises while I'm lying in a hospital bed. I'm not promising, Grant replied. I am choosing, and I should have chosen you 4 years ago. The man who once fled Detroit's working-class streets for Chicago's gleaming towers now signed away his CEO position on hospital cafeteria napkins. His only focus the woman fighting for her life and the son watching his every move. You don't have to do this, Ava whispered, watching Grant initial the paperwork his lawyer had couriered overnight. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors and Tyler's soft snores from the fold-out chair. I'm not doing it for you, Grant replied, pen moving steadily across the page. I'm doing it for us. 3 weeks later, Grant closed on a modest colonial home in Detroit's recovering Lafayette Park neighborhood, 2 miles from where he'd first met Ava years ago. The house, with its fenced yard and maple trees, looked nothing like a Chicago penthouse. That was exactly the point. What do you think, buddy? Grant asked as he carried Tyler through the front door for the first time. This is our new home. Tyler wiggled to be put down, immediately racing through the empty rooms. Where's Mommy's room? Where's my room? "Where's your room?" Grant followed more slowly. "Mommy and I will share a room. We're going to be a real family now." The word still felt new on his tongue, fragile but increasingly sturdy, like a bridge being rebuilt after collapse. Their new house, modest by standards but the nicest on the block, sat 2 streets from where he'd first met Ava at a community center fundraiser years ago. The city's resilient spirit now reflecting his own determination to rebuild what mattered. The experimental treatment protocol consumed most of Ava's energy. 3 days a week at Detroit Medical Center, then home to recover. Grant transformed the sunroom into a recovery space where she could rest while still hearing Tyler play in the backyard. The board voted in Crawford as interim CEO. Grant mentioned one evening as he helped Ava to the sofa after a particularly draining treatment session. His hands lingered at her waist, steadying her. "Do you regret it?" she asked, searching his face. "The company?" He shook his head. "I can start another company. I can't create another you." Have you ever returned to your beginnings to find your way forward? Sometimes the path ahead requires stepping back. Have you experienced this paradox? Share your journey of returning to roots. The neighborhood embraced them cautiously at first, suspicious of the wealthy outsider who'd suddenly appeared among them. But Grant's quiet dedication to Ava's recovery and his genuine interest in community issues gradually won acceptance. One night, while Ava slept, Grant found himself restlessly wandering the house. In a spare bedroom they designated as her office, he noticed a box partially hidden under the desk. Curiosity overrode privacy concerns. Inside were newspapers, dozens of them, carefully preserved. Each featured a story about Grant, acquisition announcements, profile pieces, charity gala photos. Beneath these lay a stack of letters, each addressed to him but never sent. With trembling hands, he opened the earliest one, dated just weeks after their breakup. "Dear Grant," it began. "Today I learned I'm carrying your child. I picked up the phone 100 times, but I don't know what to say. Your mother made it clear I'll never be accepted. Your focus is on building your company. Maybe it's better this way." Letter after letter documented her pregnancy, Tyler's birth, first steps, words. All the moments Grant had missed, preserved as if she'd always intended to share them someday. The last letter, dated just before Tyler found him on the bus, contained 3 words that broke him: "I was wrong." As Ava slept, exhausted from treatment, Grant discovered a box under her bed containing every news article about his success over 4 years, alongside unsent letters addressed to him, each explaining why she left, why she stayed away, and how much she still loved him despite everything. The last letter, dated just before Tyler found him on the bus, contained 3 words that broke him: "I was wrong." 4 years of silence, broken by 3 words scribbled in a letter she never sent. "I was wrong." Words that cost her everything to write and him everything to read. "You found the letters." Ava's voice was flat when she discovered Grant in the kitchen the next morning, red-eyed and exhausted. He looked up from his coffee, the letters spread before him. "Why didn't you send them?" She lowered herself carefully into the chair across from him, the effort visible. Her treatment was working, but recovery remained slow. "At first I was angry, then proud, then afraid." Afraid of what? That you'd take him from me. The honesty between them was new, raw. That you'd use your money and connections to prove I wasn't fit. Or worse, that you wouldn't care at all. Rain lashed against window panes, Detroit storms matching Chicago's intensity. As they sat facing each other across the kitchen table, years of misunderstandings laying between them like shattered glass neither knew how to reassemble. "I tried to contact you," she continued. "Once when Tyler was 6 months old. He had a fever that wouldn't break. I was terrified. I called your office." Grant frowned. "I never got that message. Your assistant said you were in Asia. Then your mother called back." Ava's fingers twisted together. "She offered money if I promised never to contact you again. Said you were engaged to someone suitable." The pieces clicked into place. His mother, his loyal assistant Denise, who had worked for his family for decades before joining his company. The convenient business trips whenever certain calls came in. "I never knew," Grant said, voice hollow. "I was never engaged. There was never anyone after you." Ava's gaze lifted to his. No one. Brief relationships. Nothing real. He reached across the table, palm up. You were the only one who ever saw me. Not my name, not my money. Just me. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her hand in his. I should have tried harder to reach you when I found out about Tyler. And I should have fought harder for you 4 years ago. His thumb traced circles on her palm. We both made mistakes. Is honesty always the best policy? Or are some truths better left unspoken? Have you ever discovered something that changed your entire understanding of a past relationship? Comment below if truth healed or hurt you more. That evening, after Tyler's bedtime, Grant found Ava on the back porch swing, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill. Without words, he sat beside her, the swing creaking gently as they swayed. What happens now? She asked, her voice soft in the darkness. Whatever we want, he answered. The treatment's working. You're getting stronger. We have a home. Tyler is happy. And your company will survive without me. He turned to face her. I've spent my life building things that don't matter. I want to build something that does. The first kiss was tentative, a question. The second held certainty. By the third, they were rediscovering each other with the intensity of time lost and found again. Later, in the quiet of their bedroom, limitations imposed by her recovery made their intimacy gentle, deliberate, healing rather than consuming. I love you, Grant whispered against her hair. I never stopped. Her response was a contented sigh, arms tightening around him. Their newfound peace shattered with the doorbell the next morning. Grant's parents standing on the threshold, expressions grim. We've come to make this right, his mother said, though her eyes said otherwise. Behind them, a man in a suit clutched legal documents whose heading Grant could clearly read. Petition for grandparental rights and custody evaluation. The wealth that once defined him became his weapon as Grant faced his parents across courtroom aisles. Ready to burn his inheritance to ashes to protect the family he chose over the family he was born into. They can't do this, Ava said, voice shaking as she paced their living room. The custody papers lay on the coffee table like a bomb. They barely know Tyler. They can try, Grant replied, already on the phone with his attorney. But they won't succeed. The legal battle consumed them. Elizabeth and Richard Lawson claimed their right to a relationship with their grandson and subtly questioned Ava's fitness as a mother, citing her health issues and modest income. Their argument is essentially that wealth equals fitness, Grant's attorney explained during a strategy session. They're painting Ava as an opportunist who hid the child for financial gain, and you as a victim of manipulation. Grant's laugh held no humor. They've never seen me as a victim before. How convenient. The community rallied around them. Ava's friends from the community center where she'd worked. Neighbors who brought casseroles and watched Tyler during court dates. Even some of Grant's former employees who'd followed him to Detroit to join his new consulting firm. The courtroom's polished wooden barriers separated them from his parents like battle lines, with Tyler's future hanging in the balance between old money's entitlement and new love's determination. Your parents despise me, Ava whispered as they waited for proceedings to begin. They always have. Grant squeezed her hand. Their approval stopped matching the day I met you. Elizabeth Lawson took the stand first, every inch the society matron in her St. John's suit and pearls. We simply want what's best for our grandson, she testified, voice dripping concern. A child needs stability, proper education, cultural advantages. And you believe Ms. Johnson cannot provide these things? Her attorney prompted. How could she? Elizabeth's gaze swept dismissively over Ava. She kept the child in poverty when he could have had everything. Would you cut ties with toxic family members to protect your chosen family? Where do you draw the line between honoring parents and protecting your children? Share your thoughts on when family becomes harmful. Grant testified next, his controlled fury evident in every clipped word. My parents never accepted Ava because of her background, her race, and her refusal to be impressed by our family name. They made it clear 4 years ago she wasn't welcome, and now they pretend concern for a grandchild they've made no effort to know. The judge's chambers fell silent as Ava's medical records were reviewed, her prognosis improving but still uncertain. Given the circumstances, the judge began, temporary custody arrangements may be necessary in the child's best interest. Grant's hand found Ava's under the table, both gripping with white knuckles as they prepared for the worst. Until the courtroom doors burst open with unexpected news. "Your Honor, I have evidence that needs immediate consideration," announced a woman Grant recognized as his former assistant, Denise. In her hands, she clutched a file folder. It concerns tampering with communications between the parties in this case. The executive boardroom he'd abandoned 6 months ago, now filled with former competitors and colleagues, all arriving with one message: "We stand with you. Not your parents' generation, but yours." The evidence Denise provided changed everything. Emails proving Elizabeth had intercepted Ava's attempts to contact Grant. Phone logs showing calls redirected. Even a memo instructing staff to block any communication from the Johnson woman. "Why now?" Grant asked Denise in the courthouse hallway after the judge called a recess. "Because it was wrong," she said simply, "and because your parents tried to recruit me for this custody battle. Some lines shouldn't be crossed." The judge postponed ruling until the new evidence could be reviewed. Meanwhile, word spread through Chicago's business community about the Lawsons' tactics. 3 days later, Grant's phone began ringing with unexpected calls. Former board members, business rivals, clients, all with the same message: "This isn't right." "Crawford here," said his interim replacement at Lawson Enterprises. "The board's divided. Your parents are pushing for permanent leadership change, but half the directors are supporting your return whenever you're ready." Winter sunlight streamed through courtroom windows, casting Grant's former business rivals in golden light as they testified one by one about his character, his capabilities as a father, and the future they believed in. Not for shareholders, but for a little boy with his father's eyes and his mother's smile. "I've known Grant Lawson for 15 years, testified James Chun, head of his biggest competitor. "We've fought over contracts and clients, but I've never questioned his integrity. What's happening here isn't about a child's welfare. It's about control." Even more surprising was the testimony from Grant's former CFO, the man who had leaked information during the media storm. "I made a terrible mistake betraying Grant's trust," Roberts admitted. "I was jealous of his success, his ability to balance work and family when I'd failed at both. But make no mistake, he's a better father in 6 months than I've been in 16 years. Have you ever found support from unexpected sources? Sometimes our true allies aren't who we expect. Share a time when someone surprised you by standing up for you when it mattered most." Through it all, Ava's strength grew, both physically and emotionally. Her doctors reported her recovery exceeding expectations. The experimental treatment was working. "I've been afraid my whole life," she admitted to Grant one night. "Afraid of not being enough. Afraid of losing Tyler. Afraid of loving you. I'm not afraid anymore." The final day of hearings arrived with snow falling gently outside the courthouse. Grant and Ava arrived hand in hand, Tyler between them in his first suit, a miniature version of his father's. "No matter what happens," Grant told Ava, "we're facing it together." The judge ruled in their favor, dismissing the grandparental petition with prejudice. The evidence suggests not concern for the child's welfare, but control over the parents. This court finds a minor child is thriving in his current environment with both parents actively involved in his care. As cameras flashed on the courthouse steps, Grant dropped to one knee before Ava, ring box open. Not because of Tyler, not because of circumstances, but because losing you once taught me what matters. Her eyes filled with tears, but her answer remained unspoken as her gaze caught something over his shoulder, his parents approaching with an expression neither had seen before: regret. The bus stop where a little boy's tears changed a man's life forever now held a commemorative plaque, where second chances begin, funded by the foundation bearing both their names. "Daddy, hurry. We'll be late," Tyler called, racing ahead on the community center path. At 5 years old, he'd grown an inch taller and infinitely more confident in the year since the custody battle ended. Grant followed more slowly, one arm supporting Ava. Though fully recovered, she's still tired easily on busy days like this one. Nervous? He asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. About speaking to 500 people or about seeing your mother again? Ava smiled up at him, the diamond on her left hand catching the spring sunlight. Their wedding 6 months ago had been simple but joyous, held in this very community center where they'd first met years before. The reconciliation with Grant's parents had been slower, more cautious. Elizabeth and Richard had finally acknowledged the harm they'd caused, though rebuilding trust remained an ongoing process. Today marked the official opening of a Lawson Johnson Family Health Center, Grant's newest venture and most personal. The facility would provide medical care to underserved families in Detroit, with special focus on parents facing critical illness. My wife will handle the crowd, Grant assured the nervous center director. Public speaking is her superpower. Wife. The word still gave him a rush of wonder each time he said it. Their wedding reception sprawled across the community center gymnasium where they'd first met years ago. Crystal chandeliers hanging incongruously from basketball hoops, Detroit's resilience merging with Chicago's opulence in a perfect metaphor for their blended worlds. That night, after the center's successful opening, Grant watched Ava tuck Tyler into bed. The boys' room was filled with dinosaurs and books, a perfect blend of Ava's practicality and Grant's indulgence. One more story? Tyler pleaded, eyes already drooping. Tomorrow, buddy, Grant promised. Mom needs rest. Later, in the quiet of their bedroom, Grant traced the treatment scars on her side with reverent fingers. These are beautiful, he whispered. They brought you back to me. She pulled him closer, whispering against his lips. No, our son brought us back to each other. These just gave us time. Would you recognize your soulmate if they reappeared at the wrong time in the wrong place? Sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as its greatest challenges. Share below if you believe in second chances and whether you'd be brave enough to take one. Morning light filtered through curtains as Grant woke to find Ava watching him, a soft smile playing at her lips. What? He asked, voice rough with sleep. I was thinking about that bus, she said. How different our lives would be if Tyler hadn't been crying that day. If you hadn't noticed him. Grant pulled her closer. I would have found you eventually. Some things are meant to be, even if we fight them at first. Outside their window, Detroit was coming alive, a city rebuilding itself one block at a time, much like they had rebuilt their family. From a nursery down the hall came the sound of Tyler chattering to his stuffed animals, content and secure in the knowledge that both his parents were just a call away. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys that remind us how quickly life can change. Comment below which chapter resonated most with you, the unexpected discovery, the health battle, or the family reconciliation. And remember, sometimes what looks like the end of your story is actually just the beginning of a better one.